Good day. Welcome to the 78th episode of the series Decolonizing the Mind. I started 2 weeks ago by explaining that the world is changing by the week, and that is because of the actions of President Trump. So I'm going to follow their development week by week. Apologies. And I call it the soap opera of President Trump and look at what he did last week, how the world was changing last week, week 11, and look at the topics that were paramount at that time. So I'll discuss the Ukraine ceasefire plan, the economic boycott of Russia. Another interesting thing that is not in Western media but important to note, which is the Russian Eurasia Initiative. Another thing that's not in Western media is the civilizational initiative of Chinese President Xi Jinping, the Russia-China-Iran deal, Iran's reaction to Trump-Gaza plan, and the attack of the US on Yemen. Now, regarding the ceasefire plan, Putin said, look, we are supportive, but there are nuances. And basically, he says, this ceasefire benefits Ukraine, given the situation in the Kursk region. He says many people think that Ukraine wanted a ceasefire under the pressure of the United States. But the reality is that they pressured the United States for a ceasefire because they need the ceasefire given the situation on the ground. He says, what does a ceasefire mean? What does it imply? Will everyone inside simply leave without resistance? Are we to allow them to exit after they've committed numerous crimes against civilians? Will the Ukrainian leadership issue a command to lay down arms? So he says basically they are trying to get their people who are now encircled and have the option to die or to surrender. The ceasefire will give them an option to come out of the situation alive and resume fighting at a later point. So the ceasefire is not because the US pressured Ukraine, it's because the Ukraine pressured the US. Then the other thing, which Putin was saying at a press conference, he says the Western sanctions, because they always come up with sanctions, the Western sanctions had an unexpected effect. It laid a robust foundation for independence and sovereignty, he says. And now the US is saying we want our companies to return to Russia. And then he says, to those who wish to come back, we say welcome at any moment. However, there will be no preferential treatment. If certain niches are filled, they will remain so. We will not create special advantages for anyone returning to our market. So those who have left Russia will have to fight to come back into the Russian market. Now, to understand the Russian economic policy, it's important to understand another initiative which the West doesn't pay any attention to, which is the Russia-Eurasia Initiative. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Eurasia, Europe-Asia part of Asia and Europe, which is the Eastern European part, Russia, and the Asian part, they need a continent-wide structure akin to the African Union or CELAC. CELAC is the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. He says this Greater Eurasian Partnership, GEP, was proposed by Putin in 2015, and that would replace an older concept that they had. Initially, Russia wanted to integrate with Western Europe in an initiative called Greater Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok. That would be a network of free trade zones, interblock trade and economic partnerships, expanded settlements in national currencies and independent payments, That is the GEP, the Eurasian Partnership. Development of Eurasian transport corridors, a foundation for indivisible security on the continent, territorial integrity, economic sovereignty, and cultural and social protection of the member states, a common platform to settle disputes and prevent conflict. So, while the West is thinking that their boycott of Russia hurts Russia, Russia is already creating initiative that opens the door for a wider economic development down the eastern route. And they started with this already in 2015, because already in 2015, mind you, the Maidan revolution in Ukraine was in 2014. They already saw the writings on the wall, which means that they already saw that, they need to go on the east. So in 2015, Putin proposed this GEP. In 2016, he named it the Eurasian Economic Union as a key integration hub, and saying that it is open for anyone, including the EU. In 2017, he described the GEP as a civilizational project that would transform Eurasia political and economic landscape. So you see it in a few speeches where Putin takes up the concept of civilization, that we are in a world history moment where there is a civilizational transformation going on, which is a very decolonial concept that I argue for. In 2022, amid Western sanctions and asset freezes, Putin calls for a comprehensive GEP economic strategy, saying that the independence of the West should increase. In June 2024, he urged expanded settlements and national currencies, independent payment system, transport corridors within GEP, and in March 2025, this month, he's saying Russia is not imposing anything, but rather initiating a discussion on the vision for a Eurasian continental structure that could serve as a foundation for future secure architecture. So while the West is thinking only in terms of Russia and the West relation in Russia, they have a different view. They look at the East. Another interesting development last week was that this news in China about Xi Jinping delivering a congratulation to the inauguration of the China-Greece Center for Mutual Learning of Civilizations. I'll come back, you see that the concept of civilization is taken up by the great power Russia and China, and that is very important for the decolonial movement to see that the concept of a plural world is a political reality in the making. He says, tolerance, coexistence, exchange, and mutual learning among different civilizations played an irreplaceable role in advancing humanity's modernization process, with the future of all countries are closely connected. So he talks about the relation between China and Greece 2,000 years ago, two civilizations glittering at each end of the Eurasian continent, making groundbreaking contribution to the evolution of human civilization. Interesting thing is that last week Modi gave an interview where he also took up the concept of civilization, saying that, arguing that China and India should work together because they are from two great civilizations, the Hindu and the Chinese civilizations, which are going to transform the coming century. Then the other important thing is that for many years, the Iranian nuclear policy was under scrutiny of the United States and the West, obviously with the background of Israel looking at it. So all these countries were negotiating to set up a nuclear deal with Iran, and now the vice foreign ministers of China, Russia, and Iran last week held a trilateral meeting in Beijing, and the Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi outlined a five-point proposal on the Iranian nuclear issue. First, stay committed to a peaceful settlement of disputes through political and diplomatic means, opposing the use of force and illegal sanctions. So he says, get away with the sanctions. The whole GCPOA policy of the United States was based on threats and on sanctions. He said, we don't do it like that. Regarding the peaceful settlement, Ayatollah Khamenei already had issued a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. So, this is a foundation for a nuclear deal now between Iran, Russia, and China, not even anymore with the other countries involved. Second, he says, stay committed to balancing rights and responsibilities and take a holistic approach to the goals of nuclear non-proliferation and peaceful uses of energy. Iran should continue honoring its commitment to not develop a nuclear weapon, and all the parties should fully respect Iran's right to peaceful uses of nuclear energy. So basically saying, look, Iran is not developing a nuclear program, nuclear arms programs, and stay committed to that. And all the other parties, including China and Russia, we will support that, and we will support the peaceful use of nuclear energy, something that Iran was arguing all the time. And I thought, third, stay committed to the framework of GCPOA as a basis for new consensus. So they're saying there is an agreement, and the question is only to honor it. It's already there. And fourth, stay committed to promoting cooperation through dialogue and oppose pressing for intervention by the UN Security Council. And fifth, stay committed to a step-by-step and reciprocal approach and seek consensus through consultation. This is what Iran was saying all the time, and now they are joined by China and Russia. Another interesting thing is that within Iran, you have this so-called difference between moderates and principalists in the West. They see them as hardliners and pro-Western versus pro-Western. And Pezeshkian, Iran's president, when he rejected Trump's offer to nuclear talk, he said, it is unacceptable for us that the US, give orders and make threats. I won't even negotiate with you. Do whatever the hell you want. That sense to do whatever the hell you want tells you something about how now the so-called moderate led by Pezeshkian are fed up with the United States. And the unity in Iran on how to approach the United States is growing, and which is very, very important for the future. And, Pezeshkian was referring to the alternative. Iran, China, and Russia were conducting joint naval military drills, exercises, and he's saying, look, that's the way we are going to do. Then another interesting thing, the Gaza plan of Trump. The US and Israel have contacted 3 African countries to discuss the resettlement of Palestinians from Gaza to Africa. This was Sudan, Somalia, and Somaliland. But that was in the press, but the officials of this government saying we haven't received any offer, and I don't think even if they received the offer, they would think about it to get Hamas in Sudan, Somalia, or Somaliland, irrespective, whether it's possible. But the fantasies are going on, and Israel Finance Minister Smotrich said that the government will set up an immigration directorate to implement Donald's Trump's plan to displace Palestinians and resettle them in a third country. He says if we remove 10,000 people a day, 7 days a week, it will take 6 months. If we remove 5,000 people a day, it will take a year. Of course, this is assuming we have countries willing to take them, but these are very, very, very long processes. So the guy is saying, you know, it's just impractical, even if we want to do it, and even if the Palestinian would cooperate, this is just a task which is logistically almost impossible. So this is the fantasy of Trump, and he was saying to in a press conference with the Irish Prime Minister. He was saying, "Oh, my Gaza plan. Oh, it was just a suggestion. Basically, it was not a policy. It was not a plan. It was a suggestion." So the Gaza plan, as I told you before, nothing will come out of it. And then last week, Trump attacked Yemen, and Trump presented as if this is the end game for Yemen. You know, we'll beat the hell out of you, forgetting that for 10 years, Yemen was bombed relentlessly, not for 10 years, for I think 4 or 5 years. Yemen was bombed relentlessly. 1 million people died there, and still Yemen survived, fought back with the help of Iran, built their military capabilities. So the Yemenis are saying, you know, you could bomb us, but our response is that we will escalate escalations, meaning that if you bomb us, we'll attack your ship with rockets. And the Israelis hope that this will develop into a regional war in which the United States attacks Iran. Whether that will come true, we'll see in the coming weeks. So that's it for this episode. If you want to support the DTM channel, subscribe it, share it with friends, families, and colleagues, and encourage them to subscribe. Get involved in discussion group, and if you want to make a donation, look at sundayhero.com how to do that. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you next week.